So much mystery surrounding what unfolded, of course, over those 2 hours and why there wasn't a resolution that was promised by the president. As you've been talking to sources, piecing all of this together, what are the stumbling blocks? You heard from the president there, the red lines remain the same, the rhetoric remains the same, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, etc. Where is there kind of room for negotiation between these two sides, as you see?
And I wish, David, that I had the magic answer for what happened on Friday. I think it is interesting to note that interview with his daughter-in-law that aired on Fox. Conversation is probably a better thing to call that, was taped before the the situation.
Oh, really?
That was as far as I know, that was taped on Thursday. So not fully even up to date right then. Not a hard-hitting interview anyway, but interesting because the president does share a lot of his views when he talks to Fox, be it his daughter-in-law or someone else.
Yeah.
That said, you're absolutely right that basically it's in a holding pattern, and it's interesting because the president started off, was it last weekend on a Saturday, by saying we've got a deal, we're going to let the details out shortly. That was a Saturday. On Sunday he pulled back, and basically that whole week we've been waiting for more.
There is a Ned Ryersonian quality to all of this.
Yeah, and there's a Groundhog Day quality.
There you go.
It, right? Because
Deja vu all over
the
again.
president has a lot of competing interests here. He obviously wants to get out of this war. He's got a lot of political reasons for that. But he, as the deal maker in chief and as the guy who sort of built both a business and a political career on being a deal maker, he doesn't want it to come out and be one that isn't great. And there are plenty of Republicans who are worried that that's exactly what he's going to do.
Dana, I want to ask you about the state of play. The president contradicted himself a bit in those remarks. I want to play some sound for you and then get your reaction as somebody who's in the region.
Their Navy is totally gone, 100%. Their Air Force is totally gone, 100%. Their military, we've sort of left it alone because we think that their military is somewhat moderate. They have other people that aren't moderate. We've taken them out. We've taken different forms of leadership out. We've actually left their military alone. People would be surprised to hear that. Because mistakes have been made in wars where you wipe out everybody and then you have a country that's, for 40 years can never rebuild.
It's a little unclear what the president means here, because he says the Navy has gone 100%, the Air Force has gone 100%, but we've left the military alone. Maybe giving him the benefit out, maybe he's talking about some of the leadership structure there, not the physical. But when it comes to Iran's capability to still strike harm, especially among regional allies, one of the things that hasn't been discussed as much as the nuclear and the Strait is their ballistic missile program, which of course was how it damaged all those countries around Iran at the start of this war. Do we have any idea what Iran's capacity is left? Can they still strike harm, and can they still damage U.S. allies in the region if this deal does truly fall apart?
I think it's not just about ballistic missiles. The damage that was done to a lot of the even energy infrastructure here in the region was caused by the drones, the really infamous now Shahed drones, and they've struck energy infrastructure in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, and civilian infrastructure as well. I think the concern here is more about drones, and that's why we saw Ukraine president visiting Saudi, visiting UAE, trying to lobby for his own technology to counter and deter those drones. So drones remain a concern for the region here. And we saw not even Iran's own capability, but let's remember that 2 weeks ago, it was Iraqi militias aligned with Iran that targeted the UAE's only operating nuclear power plant here in Abu Dhabi. So it isn't just about Iran's own capability, but the capability of its proxies, be it in Iraq and those militias there that have also targeted Kuwait, and of course, those in Lebanon. That's now where the war is raging. I think the concern is everything from the ballistic missiles and the drones and how to counter those.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I forget. I don't forget about the drones, but in my head, I think of them as like under that umbrella, but you're not. You're right. They're a very different thing. And we're going to talk a little bit later about Ukraine and President Zelensky and how he is making new pathways through the Middle East, partly because of that drone technology.
Jeff, let me ask you about the Strait and the president's tack toward it, reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, there's been so much conversation surrounding how that might resolve itself, what countries might pursue some sort of tolling agreement or tariff agreement with Iran. Let's hear what the president had to say about that during that conversation with Lord Trump, as you say, recorded on Thursday.
The Strait has to be opened immediately and has to be free, no tolls, et cetera, et cetera. And number two is they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is. It's very simple. And then we're going to get out of there. And we don't need the Strait. We don't need it because we have more. So we produce now, because of us, we produce more oil than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined ×2. Think of that. would double what they did. Add Saudi Arabia and Russia, multiply it times 2, and we're going to be much higher. We're the oil superpower.
Jeff, talk a bit about this, because this is the one thing that the president really can't jawbone. The fact that, yes, we're an oil superpower, but of course it's a global market, and his frustration is palpable over the fact that oil prices, gas prices are directionally going in one way. They're going up. They have gone up since the start of this conflict. Talk a bit about how, if at all, his tack toward the Strait is evolving in light of that.
Well, let's fact check a couple things that he said there. He says, number one, that we, as in the United States, we don't need the Strait. Well, that's not entirely true, largely because of what you just said. It's a global oil market. So even if the United States has a bunch of its own oil production, which he's very proud of, that doesn't help the gas prices writ large for this country, because it's impacted by the rest of the world. Number two, the political reality is this was not an issue before the war. Iran has learned through this war that it has the leverage of the Strait of Hormuz. And so he wants to reset that, but clearly is having some trouble getting the Iranians to just go back on something that they have learned is something that they can use. So trying to get that sort of go back in time to some extent with a deal and achieve a nuclear deal is proven to be a really tough lift.
Dana, you mentioned this just a second ago, but I do want to circle back to what's going on in Lebanon, because it is both part of this negotiation. Obviously, the Iranians want a ceasefire in Lebanon to be part of that deal. Unclear if that's going to happen or not. But
and unclear if it's one of those 14 points on the 14-point plan. I mean, yeah, I think it's important.
Also true. Yeah, also true, whether it's even included in this aspirational MOU. But there is some news in Lebanon today. The Israeli army has captured this strategic castle, and it's the deepest incursion into that territory in 26 years. What is happening there, and does it show any signs of secession or ceasefire is way too much to say, but what is going on, and why this action, and why today?
So yes, the Israeli army has expanded the ground operation that it started back 2 months ago into Lebanon. And like you said, they have seized a strategic ridge, which is the Beaufort Ridge, and that oversees the Galilee, which is a lot of the northern community in Israel, which have come under fire from Hezbollah. Hezbollah has really upped its attacks on these Israeli communities in the north and Israeli troops inside Lebanon, inside the so-called yellow zone, which is technically an occupation zone where Israeli troops are along the border, along the Israeli-Lebanese border. And this is could be a problem for the U.S. and the Iranians. Iran has always said that part of any deal with the U.S., it should ensure a halt to all conflicts in the region, primarily the one in Lebanon, because it's a war basically on Hezbollah. Hezbollah is Iran's most powerful proxy, and the proxy that's proven most useful to the Iranians. Hezbollah engaged into this war, entered the war on Iran when the U.S. and Israeli struck Tehran and killed, of course, the former supreme leader. And the first attack by Hezbollah was to avenge Khamenei, and that just proves how close they are to the Iranians, how linked religiously and militarily to the Iranians, and they didn't stop ever since. Now, we should kind of separate that from what is happening in the U.S. as well. The U.S. is sponsoring very rare talks between Lebanon, as the government, of course, and Israel on how to end the crisis. Lebanon insists on a full cessation of hostilities from the Israeli side. And of course, Israel wants to guarantee that Hezbollah is completely uprooted from the southern region along the border. Yeah. So there is no sign of stopping here. Both parties, Israel and Hezbollah, are exchanging fire. Israel is trying to push deeper into South Lebanon to strike a major blow for Hezbollah once again. It is weaker, might I say, like politically, militarily, but still it is there, and it poses a risk to Israel. So this is all up in the air. It's a very fluid situation and could become an obstacle in the talks between the U.S. and Iran.
Very important point.